let's bring him up and spotlight him. So hopefully you should all be able to see him now. And if you unmute yourself, good evening, Adrian. How are you?
Yeah, I'm all right, thanks. Yeah.
Good. Thank you so much for coming along. So I have a little introduction. You are a man who probably needs no introduction to most of the people watching tonight, I would imagine.
Well, the drunks know who I am, but that's about it, really. No, I'm just a journalist, you know, on beer and stuff like that. So.
Well, I have in my notes, award-winning journalist who specialises in beer, food, pubs and travel. He was editor of 1001 Beers You Must Try Before You Die and wrote Great British Pubs. Having spent 10 years in the music press earlier in his career, after a glittering beer writing career, he now writes a regular beer column in the Daily Star. Are you the only person with a regular beer column now in the national press?
I don't know, to be honest. I don't know.
You are, as far as I know, but
people go in the press. You know, I write for the Telegraph quite often, but and I've written for the Guardian, but I don't know, to be honest. I think I might just be, unless regionally though. There's quite a lot of people writing regularly in regional papers. But yeah, I might be, but I might not be. So someone maybe can.
Yeah, I'm sure we've got enough people in here.
Sorry about that.
And then final accolade, you were named British Beer Writer of the Year in 2017. So pretty incredible career so far, but none over yet by any means. But when we
I feel like it is. No, I'm only kidding.
It's a bit This Is Your Life, this, isn't it, really?
Sorry?
It's a bit This Is Your Life, isn't it, really?
God, no, I know. I get very embarrassed about all that sort of stuff, which is really silly. I mean, I've been a journalist for years and I've written about 14 books on beer. And I'm writing my next one for CAMRA Books at the moment on, great beers in, in beer and bottle and can, from the UK. So, yeah, I mean, it's what I do as a job. I mean, enjoy my beer, though. I'm waiting for the pubs to open. Like
that's the most important thing. What are you drinking tonight, sir?
I've got I thought it might be quite appropriate. Bateman's Victory Ale, and because I think CAMRA and Bateman's are always quite linked together, especially during the 1980s. Was it? I think when they had the big family dispute. So I thought, and I'm drinking it from. I don't collect many beer glasses from festivals, but this is when I moved to Somerset, left London in the 90s. I went to the Bridgewater Beer Festival. The Somerset CAMRA Beer Festival in Bridgewater, the only one I think they ever had, because from what I found out later on, no one came to it. Because I remember saying to my wife, get me there at 6 o'clock because it'll be rammed. And I got in there and the town hall or something in Bridgewater, and there was no one in there. And I got to know the guys about 2 years later, and they said, yeah, we could hear these footsteps echoing in the corridor. And we're thinking, there's someone coming. Good. And I think I was the only one there for about 2 hours.
Your own personal beer fest. That's quite exciting. So when we chatted for the book, we were talking about beer festivals, and I liked your memories of the CAMRA volunteers, and you made me laugh quite a lot because you talked about a phenolic bitter that you tried and a bit of a mix-up with one of the volunteers there. Could you perhaps tell us a bit more and elaborate on some of your other favourite festival moments over the years?
Well, the first festival I ever went to, I thought was awful. I said, have they got any Holstein Pills here? And everybody said, no, mate, sorry. But then about 10 years later, I went to the London Drinker one with a mate of mine who I've just been talking to on text. And I said, yeah, I'll be mentioning you. We drank 6 pints of Woodford's Wherry in a row because we thought, this is lovely. And my mate got a bit mischievous and told I don't know if he's still around. Mick Lewis used to have the long hair, did all the cider.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's here. Sorry. My mate was going, yeah. There's a perry maker in North Wales, and he got his book out and said, I can't find anything. My mate was like talking absolute rubbish. But yeah, the phenolic one you mentioned is like basically there was something wrong with this bitter, and I said to the guy, look, I'm sorry, this has got a smoky note to it, which I know. And I'd been writing about beer for a while then, so I felt confident enough to say this has got a fault. And he said, well, have you heard of the smoked beers of Bamberg, Schlenkerla? And I went, yes, but not of Leicestershire. And so But I've always enjoyed them. I'm missing them. I like the smaller beer festivals, to be honest. And I'm always aware that the people that put the work in are the volunteers. And, I hate it if someone starts moaning about them because, they're putting it in for free. They're giving their time up, they're giving their skills up. And they might not always get it right. But there's a heart and soul there putting into it. I mean, Winchester Beer Festival is perhaps one of my favourites. That was my last beer festival a year ago, Friday, March the 13th. Where I'd thanks to my colleague and friend Pete Brown, he couldn't do it several years back, so at all tasting. So I took over. I was asked to do it. He recommended me, and it's a great festival, I think, in a historic building, some good beers, and I don't know whether this is going to go down well with everyone, but there's also some key keg beers there, which I do really enjoy as well. So that's what I like about a beer festival, something quite manageable, and also in a nice town where there's second-hand bookshops as well.
We've had lots of beer festivals were recommended to me, and happily lots of them are ones that I love very, very much, and lots of them very famous because of their great keg bars, to be fair. So Manchester came up a lot, Nottingham came up a lot, Derby came up a lot, but maybe that's because everyone knew they were speaking to me, so all the East Midland ones were really famous. But yeah, I think Manchester gets a lot of thumbs up from people for its keg bar, but also for its cider. I think that's something that, and I know we've got a couple of Manchester cider people in tonight. So yeah, I think it's great that people are so loyal to their own festivals, but also that people bounce around the country to go and volunteer at different ones and support each other. And I think that probably when you're talking about quality, the real turning point seems to me to have been Christine Crine's first festival organizer post. I think 1992. I'm sure she'll correct me if that's not quite right.
I do remember seeing Christine on the stage. I don't know, in the 90s, some stage when I started going to them in London.
But she said she was absolutely insistent that beer quality was the important thing for her watch, and so that's when you start seeing casks being chilled and that sort of thing. So it's taking it up notch by notch to the kind of standard we see today. And I guess that's the sort of time as well when CAMRA are building their own kind of set of festival kits that different branches can hire out and all that kind of thing. So just the standards getting up, and volunteer knowledge is getting bigger and better.
I think in the 90s at GBBF, I do remember, I think this was before I was even writing about beer, about 94, 95, seeing several volunteers, and we've all been there, drunk, and it was like, this is not a good look, if you're trying to, you're facing the public, and I think the other incident in the 90s, I don't know whether it was Earl's Court or the other big place they used to hold them at, the temperature broke down or something. I don't know if
that was the year before, I think. Yeah,
and the beer was like soup, some of it, and then of course there was the floods. Again, people might have been there when a pasty stall was washed away. Which I don't know, I'm laughing because it must have been a bugger for the, the proprietor. But I do remember the rain coming in. But
can I offer something, Laura?
Do.
Well, the beer festival with the heat was at the Docklands Arena. There was no air conditioning because, well, the company that ran it went into receivership, and we were dealing with a slightly different beast, and they wouldn't allow us to do it except for an exorbitant cost, so we couldn't do it. We realized that the beer was crap, so the then national executive invested in the cooling system. We also had to buy a warehouse to put it all in, so it all goes back to the Docklands. That whole cooling system came out of that.
That was my last London. That was my first London festival, and it was in the middle of nowhere. And I was living in Stoke Newington at the time, and getting back and it felt like the last boat of Dunkirk. Getting out of there, people fighting to get on the tubes and everything. There were even some French there, and we say, "No, you can't come on." But no, it was, it was. But I mean, gosh, I was young then. I can put up with anything.
Well, you had to go on the Docklands Light Railway, and it stopped at 10 o'clock at night. So we had to have a fleet of buses to take people to Mile End.
I remember, yeah.
Thanks, John. So, Adrian, you were talking about Bateman's, who you are drinking tonight, and I think they're a fantastic story. And actually, they crept under my radar somehow until right towards the end of writing the book. I think it was the 1986 AGM there or thereabouts that they kind of, George Bateman stood up and gave a rousing speech that got a standing ovation from CAMRA members asking people to support the family, because there was this kind of two rival factions that looked like they were going to sell out the shares. And then it was the next year that they won Champion Beer of Britain, and that was enough to kind of start the trajectory to build this up and to get them kind of, you know, back on their feet, able to make cask profitably, and ultimately for that branch of the family to be able to rescue the brewery, which is phenomenal. So that's a real CAMRA success story. What do you think, how important do you think CAMRA is to breweries these days? Do you think that there's that kind of potential for real kind of rescue anymore?
That's an interesting point, because I think...
Sorry, Adrian, I think we just got muted there.
Okay. Yeah, can you hear me all right?
Yeah.
I think there has been a point in the last few years when some of the younger brewers coming out have been like, well, you know, we don't need CAMRA, especially if they were just doing lagers, keg and all that. But I do sense a sea change in the last several years. You know, people like 5 Points making Best Bitter. I think the relationship will be different from a relationship with lots of breweries will be different from what it used to be. And I think that in a way is a good thing, because it should be an equal relationship. And I sometimes, you know, the first book I ever did 20 years ago, West Country Ales, and I went around all the breweries in Devon and Cornwall, and it used to feel that some breweries are just making beers so they could put them into CAMRA festivals. You didn't feel they were doing it because they wanted to do what they wanted to do. And I do feel now breweries, I think CAMRA's got a lot more relevance. I had a dip in I've written several articles to the Daily Telegraph about it in the last 4 years. But it's a bit like CBA. I feel in the last 2-3 years, CBA and CAMRA, to me, a hell of a lot more relevant and a hell of a lot more vibrant and energetic than I'd felt, say, 4 years ago. And you know, your book is coming at a great time. It's always good to look back, but it's really good to look forward as well. And I think it'll be interesting to see, you know, people like the likes of Colonel, Burning Sky, Dea, you know, how they would perceive CAMRA, you know. And I don't hear that. I mean, I remember being in on conversations with people in the industry 15 years ago, you know, late night, few drinks, and they used to say the problem is the use of the word ale, you know, but I don't hear that anymore. And I think it's almost like it's a very good bit of generic, you know, very good bit of branding. You know, I thought I'd never say the word branding, but
it's Pete ribbing off on you.
No, but you know, I think breweries are, I think from my own personal experience, you know, talking to breweries, I can't talk for, we've got nearly 3,000 breweries in the UK now. I think for my own, I can only talk for the people I talk to, but I think there's this feeling of let's work together rather than, you know, let's fight each other. You know, I remember being at Brewdog in 5 years ago, and, you know, you'd say to James, what would you think about CAMRA? And he said, I don't, you know, and stuff like that. But then maybe that was just James being James, you know. But I think there's some really good potential for moving forward with breweries and stuff.
Brilliant. Thanks, Adrian. I'm going to stop you there and move on to my next guest. Thank you so much for coming along.
Thank you.
And let's go on to Colin Valentine. This is a great time, actually, to talk to Colin.